Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm gonna talk about the latest episode of Roswell, New Mexico. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. It's interesting because this episode's really all about kind of everyone kind of getting dragged in by the past in some shape or form. That no matter how far you try to get away from it, the past has a way of dragging you back. Because a big part of this episode deals with the fact is that Liz's mom, Liz and Erosa's mom pops back into town, and she hasn't been there since Kyle's dad's funeral. I think so. It's been like 7 years since she's been gone, essentially. I think, or at least that's how long was the last time they saw her. So obviously Liz just because she's like, why are you here? And she was like, your dad invited me, and he was like, no, I asked you to sign over like the rights to like the her portion of the like how much of the restaurant and stuff like that, because this is all connected to him trying to get his green card and everything. But obviously she used this as an opportunity to say like, oh, like, I want to have dinner with my family and stuff like that. For her, she's trying to make amends. So she's like, fine, like, you have dinner with me or nothing's getting signed. Obviously, Liz immediately is like, okay, obviously she wants something, because that is the thing. Like, you haven't been back in all this time. This is your first time in forever being back. Why now? Like, any point in time you could have tried. And even then, and the fact of the matter is, this should have been a clear sign too. I'm skipping ahead, that she had duplicitous intentions, because she didn't seem apologetic. You haven't been in your daughter's life for like over a decade, and you would think you'd come up and be like, oh, you know what? Be a little more. It seemed, at least seem, apologetic or remorseful about it, and she didn't seem either. I mean, she said, but it's not even just how she said it, it's just the way she was acting, like, oh, like, we're almost going to pick up right where we left off type of situation. Regardless, the fact of the matter is, reluctantly, Liz and her dad kind of have to go along with the dinner, and obviously, Rosa wants to be there too, but Liz is like, no, we can't let you be near mom, because the fact of the matter is, if mom finds out about you being back, all she's going to do is manipulate the situation to benefit her in some situation, so it's like, because at the same time, because the reason why Rosa wanted to be there is because she knows, like, her mom is kind of their mom is Liz's blind spot, because it's like, every time, like, her, like, Liz would give their mom chance over and over and over again, wanting to believe in her. Rosa kind of saw her for who she was, but Liz, sadly, she wanted to believe the best in her mom. And time again, it'd end with, Liz disappointed in her mom, tears in her eyes, and Rosa had to be there, to help her through those tears and stuff like that. So obviously Rosa just wants to, protect her. Obviously, being the older sister, now kind of technically the younger sister, it's a very complicated dynamic. Obviously still, even after all this, I'm still feeling the need to protect her, but for Liz has to explain, like, for you, mom just left. For me, it's been years, so I know how to kind of properly prepare myself for this. She even invites Max, to the occasion. And even now, like, her mom getting to know Max, and Max actually being kind of funny and charming and stuff like that. Because it turns out she's like, oh yeah, like, you should actually wear your uniform, because it would piss mom off. But obviously he's working desk duty because of the way he just kind of up and left. And obviously he's still having to explain himself to the sheriff. And he's even going like, I didn't take any, never took any days off, and I never took any sick days. I just needed time to myself. So, like, she's putting him on probation. To be fair, she won't say this, but let's not forget, he's still a suspect in Noah's death. Like, Kyle kind of talked her around a lot of that, but I still have the inkling, like, she isn't going to let that go. So I'm sure that probational period kind of plays into that. But maybe it's just her being like, oh, we'll test run things to see, you back in action for a little bit. Well, we'll see. But nevertheless, the entire time, like, his mom, like, every time, like, Liz is like, all right, let's get this done, her mom would kind of change the subject and talked about, like, her, and I told her, like, how, kind of the beginnings of everything for them and stuff like that. Even asking, like, oh, will you and Max have kids? You should think about it. Your ovaries aren't going to last forever type of situation. Or, like, your eggs aren't going to last forever type of situation. But obviously then, like, at the same time all this is happening, like, Rosa is seeing her mom and hearing her mom, and it's causing her powers to go a little crazy. And Isabel is there to, Liz sent Isabel to keep an eye on her. But, Isabel, it's so interesting, like, the dynamic that's created, because obviously Isabel and Rosa got close because of the whole Noah situation, but now it's kind of interesting because they're now kind of getting close just on their own. So part of me was wondering, I was like, what direction that story is going to go down, because it's interesting, because now it's becoming an actual kind of friendship, because I think they found a kinship, because I think Isabel sees some of herself in Rosa, I think. Especially because Rosa had drawn that black hole, and it was supposed to kind of represent, like, the fact is, for her, it's like her mom is mentally ill, and she's like, I am too. And she's like, that's why Noah went to me, because I was already broken. And she was even suggesting maybe that's why he came after you too, Isabel. And that kind of got Isabel thinking, and that turns into a plot point we'll get to later on. But obviously, like, power went out, and at first it's like, what's that all about? So it's like, because at first I think Liz was kind of thinking like, no, Rosa's not here, so she's thinking the person that shut down all the power was Max, because she's coddling Max a little bit, but he's like, no, I'm not. She's like, you don't need to kind of keep up this machismo of being tough and everything. It's just, for her, she's scared, because she's like, your heart is still weak, and if you overexert yourself, you're going to end up potentially killing yourself. So it's like, obviously she worries, but Max just wants to prove like, no, I'm okay, I don't need you worrying about me. He's already got his siblings worried about him, plus her, like, he doesn't need even more from her. So it's actually kind of sad in the grand scheme of things, because we hear, Liz's dad talk a little bit more about his relationship with their mom, about how, because he's explaining to Max that basically he's always been kind of an anchor, like, as wild as she is, like, he's always tried to be that anchor that kind of ties her down, to kind of bring some stability to her. But he's like, the more he tried to anchor her down, the more she kind of almost like resented him and pushed, like, the harder she would kind of push against him. Because I guess maybe it's the type of thing of like, maybe, sadly at the end of the day, maybe like being a mother was something she never really planned on or necessarily sadly wanted anymore, or maybe at one point in time she did, maybe, but eventually got to the point she didn't want that anymore. And maybe she started resenting their dad a little bit, because because he had this, like, this small little life, and she wanted more. But then, like, they also, like, while they're fixing the lights, they noticed that, like, they were cut, and I was like, did she cut them? Because at first it seems like, he's under the impression, he's like, did like a rat or something do this, or like some critter or something. But then Liz, her mom had brought that present and everything, and had her open it, and it was like, these are shoes that I forgot, for her quinceañera. I cannot say that word. I'm so sorry. It was I think just shortening it, they just called it quinceañera, but I can't say the word quinceañera. I just can't. I'm sorry. Once again, my Spanish is terrible. But the fact of the matter is, so it's like kind of, because obviously she had also brought up the fact that she's been sober for 10 years is actually because of Rosa's death, which will also make you think if she found out Rosa was alive, that probably would undo all the progress that she had made, sadly, when you actually kind of think about it in the grand scheme of things. Regardless, obviously the gift meant a lot to Liz, so she's like, I want to see your graduation photos and stuff like that, and comes back, and lo and behold, she notices, wait, things aren't where I left it. I put that jar, like, I made sure to put all that in front of the safe to kind of let me know in case my mom goes looking, and also notices that the dial was in a different place too. So it's like, you stole. She's like, I'm your mom, why did you even jump to such a conclusion? And then Liz is like, let me see what's inside your purse. She's like, I won't let you. It's like, come on. And Liz looks in. I mean, what really makes it worse is the fact is that, like, it was a ring of the Arturo's, like, mother. It's kind of like one of the last things he has to remember his mom. You came to steal, and it's like, that's low. But to be fair, Liz has already talked about the fact that she had even talked about it, I think, a little earlier, about like some of the stuff that like her mom did just to kind of, that she would steal money to kind of, go off and get high with. And it's just kind of like, in that one instance, it just all came flooding back to Liz of like, why do I for an iota of a second, I wanted to believe you. And then, it's just like her mom just kind of proved herself over and over again to be the person that she is. And obviously it's so heartbreaking for Liz. And her mom is kind of trying to spin it to be like, I might not have been like a PTA mom, but everything I did, all that I've sacrificed for you, like I might not have been there, but like I sacrificed so much to get to this country so that you have a better life. And the fact is, you have such weight. You were supposed to be so exceptional, but look at your wasted potential. You're here basically minimalizing like all that she's done right now. Basically, working at this restaurant, kind of like I said, like this life was too small for her in certain regards, I think. And obviously for Liz, it's kind of like you really don't have, there's no room for you to, talk about all that, because like I know like all your dirt about like the reason why you left town in the first place is because the sheriff, she found out about you and her husband having an affair. Obviously, she's like, I also know about Rosa being his daughter and not dad's. And in that moment, Max and her dad come. She's like, oh, I was like, oh, your dad still didn't know. I was like, of course. Like, why would you ever let him know something like that? So I was like, damn, this is like a really messed up way for him to kind of, find out about it. But at the end of the day, it's like, for them, it's like this is their family. And she hasn't been a part of it a long time. She has no place in this family. And at the same time, like, Rosa had doused her car in gasoline and was going to light it on fire, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. But then, like, her powers and everything, which are still out of control, ended up activating, and she ended up blowing up the car. So at the end of the day, they got the paper signed by her, and their dad was like basically, hey, take the ring and just leave. And even later on, Liz asked him, you kind of were hoping she would actually not take the ring. And he was like, there was a part of him that was kind of hoping that she would do the right thing. Because even he had said, like, she tries to do the right thing. She tries to do the right thing, but she goes about it the wrong way, And even at the end of the day, her mom was like, I still, despite everything, me having ulterior motives for coming here, I did actually want to see you and stuff like that. Because in her mind, it's like, you're my only baby girl I have alive, So but it's still just kind of like, that's just, you covering your tracks because you feel guilty about the fact. Because the sad thing is, despite her being sober and everything, it seems like she still has those destructive tendencies. And obviously, like, it makes Rosa start thinking, like, there's no cure for me because my mom's messed up like that. So I was doomed to be messed up, long before, everything with Noah and everything, so. And that's kind of a, really sad situation to really be in when you kind of break that down. I did like the fact is that Max is like, oh, hand over the ring. She's like, oh, like, what are you going to do? And it's like, oh, that basically she's seeing some politician do it. And it's like, oh, the fact of the matter is he doesn't know about your past at all. So unless you want me to bring up a little town called Roswell, New Mexico, I wouldn't, I'd give that ring back because it's like, oh, he must not know about your past, even the fact that you have two daughters. So the fact of the matter is your ugly history might, mess up your thing. Because for him, he was like, I'm done being the good guy. And for me, I wonder, are these going to be lasting effects of Max coming back? Like, I mean, to be fair, it's like, oh, this isn't that bad. I mean, he's kind of extorting someone, kind of blackmailing them and giving something back that they stole. So it's like, go a little dark to, counteract like the darkness that is Liz and Rosa's mom. But at the same time, you're like, yeah, but these could be baby steps to something much worse down the line. Like I said, we don't know the full scope. Like, he might have banished all that darkness, but we don't know like how deep that might have like seeped into his soul. Like, you never know. I mean, dying and coming back to life can't be the most easiest thing. Obviously, it wasn't for Rosa either. So it's like, it's a complicated thing that I'm curious to kind of see like what they end up doing with that later on. So it turns out, their dad actually knows about Rosa. He's known the entire time, but it's like it didn't matter because that was his, it was, she's his daughter regardless of, who her biological dad is. So like that stuff, that never mattered to him. So he always knew. So, but now it's like, at least they can look at this situation as we're going forward, towards, helping get his green card and everything. But part of me wonders, like, they're not done with her mom yet. I mean, because she might try and kind of like use this as an opportunity to get back at Max. Because it's like, oh, you want to play dirty? Well, I can play dirty too. Or she might have even more ulterior motives. Maybe this will be the last we see of her. I don't know. But I just get the inkling, like, the fact is they made her come back now and just, I don't know. Maybe there's going to be more to it. Maybe not. Like I said, maybe this will be the only time we see her. But like, I think their mom kind of has a tendency to kind of sweep up and destroy a lot of stuff around her. So it's going to be interesting to see if there ends up being more to that or not. As I was bringing up earlier, like, Rosa is dealing with the fact that she has powers and everything, and I'm curious to see where that situation is with her, like, and Max, because obviously there was a whole like him and Isabel and Liz being what they're trying to help her control her powers, but a no-go because, and Max even at one point touches her, but it freaks her out because it's like, the fact is, you brought me back to life and I saved your life, so we're even. That doesn't give you the right to touch me, like, because it's still a reminder of like literally everything that happened to me, like you being in my head, in my dreams and stuff like that, just everything that happened to her, including like the whole like cover up and everything. It's like, how am I ever going to forgive you? And that's the thing, like, after all the history between her and Max specifically, because this was all on Max. It wasn't on Isabel because Isabel wasn't aware. This was like between Michael and Max, and it was actually Max's idea in the first place. So it's like everything kind of rests on him. All those sins kind of lay on his shoulder. So it's not going to be the easiest thing for her to kind of forgive him, because it's just like, and also she's like accepting the fact is that you're the one banging my sister. It's like she gets that Liz loves him, but it's like it's hard because like you might love him, but I hate and despise him, you know. So it's a complicated situation. I'm curious to see, will there ever be a resolution between the two of them? Like, will they ever be on good terms? Who knows? I mean, you couldn't blame Rosa if they never were. You know, so, and sadly at the end we saw that she does have some of her mom's pills. So it's like, despite, you know, because we already saw, like, obviously, like, because she even said, like, Max is kind of the reason why she started drinking again. It's like she had this clean bill of health. She had this second chance after coming back to life, but now she's kind of going down that lane again. I mean, to be fair, because, you know, Liz tried to say, like, you know, their mom being as destructive as she is, she was able to be sober for 10 years, saying that there is hope for, you know, Rosa as well. It's not hopeless, that there is a kind of a light out of this darkness for her. But, you know, we'll kind of have to see kind of where that story goes, because I'm sure it starts here, and obviously her story is going to start spiraling. So at the same time, there's the whole situation where Max got that memory back at the end of the episode. It turns out he talks about the fact is that it was actually kind of a recurring nightmare he'd have about being chained up, but now there's more to it. And he's like, maybe it has something to do with our past, like before we came here. But Isabel and Michael kind of want him just to let it go, because it's like their lives are good right now. So it's like, why go drudging up the past and complicate things, especially for Michael, because like he's happy with Maria. So but then, like, Maria and him are talking, and she has a vision of Kyle potentially getting kidnapped, like, you know, abducted. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And they go check on him, and that's a whole thing, because him and, once again, her name's Stephanie, right? Steph. I think so. Like I said, I have to look that up, because I keep feeling like it is, and I haven't corrected myself yet if it isn't. But the fact of the matter is, no, it seems like Kyle's okay, but it's like, all right, let me look into this and see if there's something more to it, because she's worried, because it's like the condition that her mom has, her grandma has. But then I was starting to think, I was like, wait, so has your mom been having visions and stuff like that? Kyle looks into it, and it turns out, yeah, she's not an alien, but it turns out that her grandmother, the insane insurance company that was taking care of everything for her, was a front for the that prison that Michael's mom was at. So it's like, so it means it's all connected, because I mean, it's interesting like how everyone's lives are so connected, because obviously Kyle's dad ended up dying from cancer from one of the aliens. So maybe the same thing happened to Maria. So you're like, oh, was it alien powers? Like, is everyone getting alien powers? But it's not until later on, when Michael actually did some investigating and found out that basically they were experimenting, trying to do a super soldier type of situation of, you know, taking alien abilities and applying it to humans. And in this regard, they ended up, you know, Maria's grandmother ended up being a test subject. And obviously, because at first, you know, Michael was like, I don't get how she would get involved. But Maria was like, back then, like, there was a lot of stories about like the government using black people to experiment on and stuff like that. So for her, it was like kind of almost like, sadly, no surprise to hear that. So now it explains like where her powers came from, that they are of an alien origin, but more so man-made, a little more man-made than Rosa's, because Rosa's was a byproduct of being inside of the pods for so long, you know. So but luckily for Kyle, because of Maria's vision, luckily Michael was able to get him out of the way. I mean, granted, had to push him into a beer bottle, and it kind of stabbed him in the side, so that sucked. But it's kind of interesting, because obviously it's like visions, you know, the misinterpretations and stuff like that. So it seemed like it was going to be an alien abduction type of thing, but it turns out to be, oh no, you were almost about to be hit by a truck type of situation. So, but luckily everything worked out. I mean, he had to stitch himself up, sure, which inadvertently the whole situation ended up bringing him in, like, once again, Stephanie, together. What's interesting though too is he's not bringing up what he saw, because I guess for him it's like he's being a little passive aggressive about it. Like, the fact is, why are you spending so much time here and stuff like that? Like, once again, you saw her on that operating table, and I guess for him it's like, the thing is, you're not telling me the truth. But it's just, for her, it's like she feels like a lot of people have a tendency to kind of get close to her and it just goes. And because of that, she kind of, I think obviously the way she acts, is kind of her defense mechanism. But to be fair, like, Kyle's the closest thing she has to a friend. Only, that's why it's like, because she can handle blood normally, but it's just seeing that it's someone that she pauses. It's like, well, likes or cares about. That kind of makes the whole situation a little different. But the fact of the matter is, it's kind of strange how everything did end up working out and ended up kind of inadvertently bringing them together. But what's interesting, though, is Maria kind of doesn't look at this as a curse anymore. Like, at first she was pissed when she learned, like, oh, it's because of experimentation. But now she's thinking what was kind of passed down in her family might be a gift now. She's like, the fact of the matter is, because she was able to save Kyle, Kyle can go off and save 5 more people. So she kind of looks at it like that. She's thinking, like, oh, this is a superpower. And you have that look on Michael's face, like, because this whole thing is, rather than it being a superpower, it is more of a burden. And he looks at it as more of a curse than it is a blessing. But it also kind of got me thinking about the twins they met. Was it last episode or the episode before last? Whatever the case may be. The one with David Anders playing both of those twins. Remember, one of them was being experimented on. It's like, well, you don't think it has anything tied into this? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it just had some. Maybe it's interesting because how that kind of like connects to Maria's stories, so connects to Maria. So if that ends up being the case, and her grandma was experimented on, and that led to powers in their family, so it makes you wonder, is that why they disappeared too? Because they knew, like, oh, like, if the police find out about us and stuff like that, we can't let the government know because they must be still on the run or something. So maybe they're because most of the people from the experiments died and stuff like that. So maybe there's, who knows? It could be a twisted thing of, like, maybe they're the children, maybe their situation is similar to Maria's, where it's like, oh, it got passed down to them. But then there was also part of my brain that's like, not unless they're from back then and they just never aged. You never know with that type of stuff. So I'm wondering, is that a connection they're going to make? Maybe, maybe not. But I'm interested to see, like I said, now, like, everyone's getting powers. Like I said, Maria's got these, and she's a little more grateful for her abilities. Obviously, Rosa not as much, so that's just kind of an interesting thing. But because of all of this, it has gotten both Michael and Isabel more interested into looking into the past, even though they didn't want to. Because in Isabel's case, it's like, she's like starting to think maybe Noah came after her because of that. Maybe she was already broken, because she's like, after that, when that guy attacked me, she's like, I'm the only one that suffers the whole blackout situation. Like, Max is the one who actually killed him, but he never suffered from that. So she's wondering if it's a deeper thing to it. Like, maybe the trauma isn't just in her memories. Maybe it's actually in her DNA. Maybe there's something from her past, learning about who her parents are, that might make her understand, like, what's the cause of all that. And obviously, Michael's got to go digging into the past, because finding out about what happened to Maria's grandma and potentially finding a cure, and he calls it, a disease, this illness, because he doesn't look at it as a blessing to have these powers, so that's probably going to turn into an issue in itself of, like, with their relationship of, like, oh, like, you look at these as a bad thing, but I look at them as a good thing. They even set up that whole thing about Max looking into Cam's disappearance, because, like, her car was impounded like a couple hours outside of the city. So obviously he's got to look into finding out what happened to her, which we still have to circle back to that. So a lot of interesting things to kind of keep in mind as we go forward. I'm curious to see ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.